Reminder, I do have a Patreon and Subscribe Star, and if you join today, you get access not only to all the long paints that I do of every video, but you also get access to this month's exclusive video, where I talk about a little theory I call the Velma Dinkley Principle. What the deuce is that? Well, you're just gonna have to find out! And in the meantime, let's get on with the video. What's good, people? Agent Juice reporting for duty. Solar Opposites versus Rick and Morty. Which is the better show? Well, in this video, I am going to tell you my opinion. But before we get into it, I do want to mention that, as of this point, I have seen the second season of Solar Opposites, which came out, I think, a month, if not more, ago. And as of this point, I've only seen the season premiere of Season 5 of Rick and Morty, and it's going to be a while before I see the rest of Season 5. However, I still want to talk about the two shows, because there is one I do prefer over the other. But before I reveal my answer of which one I prefer, let us first buckle into our favorite spaceship, whether it's a really big one or a really small one. Let us pick up some kind of weapon that does some kind of unspeakable horrible things to our victims. Let us use that weapon to smash the like button, of course, and let's dive into the combat between these two shows. So, as we always do on this channel, let's first discuss the Speedpaint. For a while, I've been wanting to compare these two shows. Basically, when Solar Opposites first dropped and I saw the first season, which I did review last year, if you want to check that video out. Look at me plug. And watching the first season of Solar Opposites, my overall consensus was, it was pretty good, you know? And watching the second season, I'm really digging it now. And so I wanted to show the two shows kind of combating each other for this case. So the original idea was to draw some kind of fight between Rick Sanchez, who of course is one of the titular characters in Rick and Morty, and Corvo, one of the lead characters in Solar Opposites. And so I was thinking, like, okay, how am I going to do a fight? Maybe they'll like shoot with laser guns and something, but I wanted to make it like funny and some kind of meme. So I was like, there's got to be a meme out there or something that can make this funny. And I realized, oh, of course, The Last of Us 2, the strangle meme, right? And so I was like, of course, I kind of feel ashamed that it took me so long to kind of finally figure out that I could make something so simple. So that's the explanation. This is the Last of Us 2 strangle meme with Rick Sanchez and Corvo. All right, which one do I prefer? Solar Opposites and Solar Opposites. That's the one I like better. I like Solar Opposites better than Rick and Morty. Why do I feel like that? Well, ultimately, I feel like Solar Opposites has been doing a lot, not everything, a lot of what I like in Rick and Morty, but so far it has not committed any of the sins that Rick and Morty has committed. And that being said, I do want to acknowledge that as of right now, Solar Opposites only has 2 seasons, and Rick and Morty is coming on its 5th season. So, Rick and Morty has had more opportunity to have bad episodes and have bad things happen, whereas Solar Opposites is kind of following that trend we see a lot, in that the second season of, almost more like a rule than the exception, it seems that second seasons of shows are amazing, right? Because it takes the first season to kind of find your footing, and by the second season, it really rocks you. So, you know, you got that, it's kind of the opposite of what's called the sophomore slumps, which is this a concept in sports where like a rookie player will have a great season, but the second season that same player just doesn't have a really good one. It's the sophomore slumps. It's kind of like the opposite, where the first season is kind of rocky, but the second season really rocks it. So to be fair, I do like Solar Opposites, but I have to acknowledge that it just came off its rockin' second season. So for all I know, by season 3, they'll screw it all up. Or they won't, I don't know. Okay, so that being said, what do I like about Solar Opposites that I also like in Rick and Morty? Well, humor, right? I'm always a big fan of dark humor, and there's plenty of that in both Solar Opposites and Rick and Morty. Part of the reason why I really loved Rick and Morty, and I also do want to say, going back to the whole second season thing, is I really liked the second season of Rick and Morty. That was before it kind of, you know, petered. You know, I do want to acknowledge that. But anyway, going into Rick and Morty had great dark comedy. You know, this concept of this drunken scientist and his grandson, and the both of them are on first name basis, which is kind of funny. And they go on these crazy adventures, and of course it's that concept of like, because the whole thing was a lampoon on Back to the Future, because Justin Roiland had a Back to the Future, like a crass Back to the Future parody that ended up becoming Rick and Morty. So that's kind of the origin of it. So it's kind of like that novelty of going, haha, it's like Back to the Future, only more screwy and more dark. So it's got that great edge going to it. And of course, Solar Opposites is kind of the same thing. It's kind of like, oh ho, we're quirky, look at us, we are aliens, we're trying to adapt to Earth society, but look at all the screwed up things we do, you know, to mention the whole show within a show thing that Solar Opposites does with the wall, right? Because Yumulak has a habit of shrinking people he doesn't like and throwing them into this wall terrarium, and there's a whole side story. And of course, in the second season, the side story gets really juicy, which is really nice. And so that's something that's also engaging me, and so that's another reason why I like Solar Opposites, and so da-da-da-da-da. So we have dark humor, which is really great. We also have kind of like zany absurdity. I really like it when they merge zany absurdity and dark humor together, so they both have that going for it. Now, I mentioned that I like Solar Opposites more because it hasn't committed the same sins as Rick and Morty. So what are these sins? I feel like at this point, Rick and Morty has more unlikable characters than Solar Opposites. And the biggest culprit of unlikable characters has to be Rick Sanchez himself. That's kind of the reason why I'm drawing him getting choked out in this picture. The show has kind of a bad habit of showing Rick Sanchez being too on top of everything. In fact, here's another shill. I have another Rick and Morty video that I made. I think it was also last year. It'll be in the link in the description box down below. But the point is, if you check out that video, I called Rick the N-word, and of course, the N-word, I mean the M-word, and by the M-word, I mean Mary Sue. Mary Sue, I am aware, is a loaded term, but the general mature consensus of the word Mary Sue is essentially a character who is so successful that it is shown that the writer and the universe go out of their way to prop up said character. And it really feels like Rick is that kind of character. The universe and the writers go out of their way to show him always on top of a situation, never really in the wrong. And even when they try to show like, no, actually he's imperfect. Look, he's a depressed alcoholic and he hates himself. And yeah, that's great and all, but it's almost shown as kind of like almost like a burdenous virtue of like, oh, I'm so great, but I'm so depressed at my greatness. It's that single tier nonsense, right? Where it's a quality that's supposed to be a flaw, but it's not really meant to be it's not really shown in practice as a flaw, but rather as a means of showing like, oh, how noble and relatable this perfect character is. So it ends up kind of falling flat on its face. So that's the big problem. The second problem is the way the show treats Jerry. And here's the funny thing. They're trying to make Jerry this despicable loser that everyone is supposed to hate. But, and I think I even mentioned this in my last Rick and Morty video, I actually like Jerry and make him my favorite character out of spite, because he is unnecessarily poo-pooed upon, I feel, in the story, to the point where they'll try to justify him being the butt monkey, as the TV trope calls him, which is the character that's like the butt of every joke. They try to butt monkey him, if you will, and try to justify it by writing in reprehensible and cowardly characteristics. But when they write those characteristics into the show and into the episodes, they come off as bizarrely out of character, like he's all of a sudden kind of switching the way he behaves, so the writers can prove, see, Jerry, you're supposed to hate Jerry. Jerry's supposed to be a loser, haha. And it's like, no, it comes off as stilted and unnatural. It feels like you're trying to cover your own butts here to try to make this character come out worse than he actually is. And that's kind of a big, unfortunate thing about Rick and Morty, is they're suffering from that. That being said, and I think I mentioned this in the last Rick and Morty thing I made, they are getting a little better at it. Season 3 was kind of when they really went nutty with it, but season 4, especially kind of towards the latter end, they're kind of righting themselves. So there is that, and of course there's some steps I'm seeing that they're trying to do, and I'm being, you notice how I'm being very like hesitant and tepid and wishy-washy, and the reason why is because season 5 is not out in its completion yet, so I don't want to say something too definitively here. So I'm kind of being for now. So it's like, okay, I'm seeing little bits of improvement, but we shall see what happens. That being said, at the same time, solar opposites could fall under the same trap. For all I know, they're going to make a character who's incredibly unlikable and force the writing on it, or they're going to make a character into a Mary Sue and force the writing on that. I can't predict the future. I'm just calling it as I'm seizing it right now. One more point I want to make, and this is kind of something I'm realizing kind of like off the top of my head here, is that we do have to acknowledge that Rick and Morty had this massive popularity explosion that ended up with a bunch of crazy fans. And of course the crazy fans did a bunch of crazy stuff with like the Szechuan sauce and the weird kid jumping up on the McDonald's counter going like, wubba-lubba-dub-dub, and I'm Pickle Rick, I'm Pickle Rick. You know, we haven't seen a solar opposites equivalent of that yet. And I say yet as if I'm expecting it, but I don't really expect it, but I don't want to eat my words either. So, you know, we shall see. It hasn't happened yet. So there is also that. And of course, when a show gets crazy popular and you get fans that are like really crazy into it and are crazy people, then you have this whole kerfuffle of like writers going like, well, I don't want to be associated with that. So they kind of change the writing in like the meta of the universe. And there's a whole can of worms that kind of unravels from there. So I do want to acknowledge that. Finally, there is one other thing I want to mention. There is a fellow YouTuber, IZZY, and you can check out his content. I'll go ahead and link his channel. He mentioned on Twitter a bit ago that he tweeted out loud, I wonder if Solar Opposites is Justin Roiland's attempt at separating himself from Dan Harmon. And probably, kinda, I think so. I kinda sorta agree with that sentiment. And the reason why I believe that way is because, as I mentioned earlier in the video, Justin Roiland came up with the idea of Rick and Morty because it used to be this Back to the Future crass parody that he made. It was actually a film festival that Dan Harmon runs. I'm looking at my notes, Channel 101, I think it's called back in the day. So that's how like Justin Roiland was discovered. And so the two teamed up together and Rick and Morty was made. And so like I wouldn't be surprised if Justin Roiland is trying to kind of show his chops as an independent creator by making Solar Opposites himself. That very well could be. Now there are some other like, you know, rumors under the mill that I do not know how true or false these are. Something about like how, I don't know if the two have had arguments together. I've heard stories that like, you know, Justin Roiland is easier to work with than Dan Harmon, or that might be reversed. Again, these are just like rumors I just kind of hear, and I don't want to put any weight behind them because that's all they are. That's all that I've been exposed to is just rumors. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if Justin Roiland wants to kind of forge his own way, and I think that's admirable. You know, someone should really, if someone wants to set their mark on the world by themselves, I support that. So yes, as of right now, I like Solar Opposites more than Rick and Morty. Will that change? Maybe. I have to, honestly, the only way I can make a definitive choice is when both series finally end permanently. And then I can kind of do a retrospective and then give my opinion. But that is probably far into the future. So in the meantime, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up there for today. So you people know what to do. If you like what you see and you want to see more, go ahead and tickle those sacred buttons. Go ahead and share this video and comment down below because I want to hear what you think. And I want you to share my word. And of course, the word that you hear and that you like around the world. So we can spread the influence. Also remember, of course, I have the Patreon and Subscribe Star. So not only do you get the exclusive video I mentioned, but you also get the long version of today's speed paint and all the speed paints that I do make from now on. And of course, if you wish to suck me elsewhere on the interbots, you can always check out my links that I put here up on the screen. And of course, I always make special mention to minds.com because it's the big alternative website that I use that kind of combats the mainstream tech oligarchy that we find ourselves under. And so yes, with all that said, I thank you for spending this time with me. I do hope you all stick around, and until next time, a wubba lubba deuces, son.